Coming up on Arirang News, the finance ministry for a fifth straight month says South Korea's economy is stagnant. The latest Green Book shows exports and growth are still weak, and Japan's trade curbs aren't helping. North Korea fires 2 more missiles into the East Sea, at the same time denouncing South Korea and saying it won't sit down for talks with Seoul again. And as South Koreans boycott Japan over the trade conflict, sales of Japanese beer in Korea plunge in July by almost half, and they're on track for an even bigger fall this month. It's 4:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for tuning in to our afternoon newscast. I'm Devin Whiting. North Korea fired yet more projectiles into the East Sea this morning. It's the regime's second launch in 6 days and the 6th in 3 weeks. Kim Ji-yeon has the latest.
South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said North Korea fired what it presumes to be 2 short-range ballistic missiles into the East Sea at around 8:01 and 8:16 a.m. Friday morning. They were fired from North Korea's eastern coastal county of Dongcheon in the North's Gangwon province, recording a maximum altitude of some 30 kilometers with a flight distance of some 230 kilometers and maximum speed of more than Mach 6.1, which is some 7,466 kilometers an hour. The South Korean military is monitoring the situation in case of additional launches while maintaining a readiness posture and is working closely with the U.S. to verify more about the recent launch. The South Korean government said the latest launch is a response to the joint summertime training by the South Korean and U.S. militaries, but a military source said earlier that the recent launches may have been planned long ago, and the North is using the drills as an excuse to continue their launches. Right before Friday's test fire, North Korea slammed South Korea, saying it has no thought of ever sitting down with Seoul again. It criticized Seoul's defense ministry's release of its midterm force enhancement plan, a blueprint for how the defense budget will be allocated during the next 5 years, and mocked comments made in President Moon Jae-in's speech, calling them reckless and unrelated to Liberation Day. North Korea's state-run Korean Central News Agency posted a statement by the Committee for the Peaceful Reunification of the country, criticizing President Moon for saying the dialogue atmosphere was not marred, despite some recent worrisome acts of North Korea, when Seoul is currently holding joint military training with Washington. It quoted President Moon as a, quote, impudent man and said Seoul better not think of resuming talks alongside North Korea and the U.S., once the joint training is over, a move to alienate Seoul from the denuclearization talks. North Korea's criticism over the South Korea-U.S. Joint Combined Command Post training continues despite it being scaled down from previous years. The training runs through next Tuesday, August 20th, and involves computer-based war simulations to verify South Korea's state of readiness for the envisioned transfer of wartime operational control from Washington to Seoul. This year, real military equipment and forces are not being mobilized. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
South Korea's National Security Council is urging the North to stop actions like this, which it says only raise military tensions. The members of the committee agreed to closely consult with the U.S. in analyzing the latest missiles. The NSC met this morning, led by the head of the National Security Office, Chung Yi-yong. According to the Blue House, President Moon Jae-in has been briefed on the launch and related developments. North Korea is launching missile after missile lately, but U.S. President Donald Trump has largely brushed them off, saying they don't violate the understanding he reached with Kim Jong-un. So Trump seems relatively unconcerned, but security experts not so much. Oh Soo-young reports.
North Korea's latest missile tests are a clear sign of the regime's upgraded attack capabilities. This is according to the Washington Post, which on Thursday quoted various defense experts who raised concern about the regime's test firing of short-range missiles over the last 4 months. The launches included at least 2 new types of ballistic missiles, including the road-mobile KN-23. According to the Post, these missiles appear to threaten South Korea's missile defense system, with the missile fired last Tuesday flying at least 450 kilometers. Vipin Narang, a professor of political science at MIT, also pointed out that the missiles are short solid fuel projectiles, which means they can be deployed and fired at short notice. They also fly at lower altitudes, making them harder to intercept with South Korea's current anti-missile systems such as THAAD. Experts told the Daily that North Korea may not be able to miniaturize a nuclear warhead to mount onto a missile like the KN-23 just yet. But even conventional warheads could be devastating if they target South Korea's nuclear power plants. Pyongyang said its missile test last Saturday included a new weapon that was different from previous weapon systems, but did not specify what it was. Observers say it's too soon to be certain about the latest weapon, but what's for sure is that the recent series of missile tests not only demonstrate the North's intentions to boost its military capabilities, but also help bolster Kim Jong-un's reputation at home as a powerful leader. 오수영 Arirang News.
And President Trump has again highlighted his good relationship with the North Korean leader, saying Chairman Kim called him within 10 minutes of his Twitter invitation in June to meet at the DMZ. Trump gave a radio interview on Thursday in which he said he was going to the inter-Korean border anyway, so he decided he wanted to meet Kim again. He said no one knew how to reach the North Korean leader on short notice, so he just tweeted the invitation and got the call from Kim right away. It was the craziest thing, in Trump's words, and incredible. The two of them had a good meeting, he said, and they have an incredible way of communicating. Yesterday, South Korea observed National Liberation Day, and in a speech for the occasion, President Moon called for dialogue with Japan to resolve the trade dispute. No official response from Tokyo, but Japanese media are responding. The Japan Times called Moon's tone conciliatory, reporting that he offered to join hands if the Abe government chooses to engage in dialogue. The Nihon Keizai Shimbun and Yomiuri Shimbun said that Moon suppressed criticism of Japan in his speech and did not bring up specific issues such as Japan's wartime forced labor program or its sexual enslavement of Korean women. The papers also quoted Moon's call for dialogue and cooperation. However, the reports noted there is still a deep divide between Seoul and Tokyo over historical issues. An art festival in Japan recently removed a statue symbolizing the so-called comfort women, the victims of Japan's sexual slavery. Now, other artists are asking to have their work taken down too, as a gesture of solidarity against censorship. Lee Min-sun reports.
After one of Japan's largest art festivals removed a statue representing victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery, known as comfort women, a group of artists at the festival demanded for their works to also be removed. The comfort women statue was on display as part of the After Freedom of Expression section at the Aichi Triennale festival. 11 out of over 90 participating artists have asked for their artwork to be removed as long as the display of the statue is banned as a public gesture of solidarity with the censored artist. A group of artists sent an open letter condemning the decision to remove the statue and criticizing festival organizers for surrendering to irrational threats and political demands that violate freedom of expression. A U.S. nonprofit reporting group also decided to withdraw the display of their animation on August 10th. The artists withdrawing their work include 2 Korean artists and 9 artists from Europe and Central and South America. Some of their works were the main pieces that were used on the festival's poster and for the opening ceremony. Meanwhile, a Spanish art collector has decided to buy the very statue that was censored by the festival. The collector will display the statue along with other art pieces that have been censored or suppressed at an art center he will create next year called Freedom Museum in Barcelona. A group of art and cultural figures in Korea, including the artists of the statue, will hold a discussion on August 22nd in Seoul to take a closer look at the issue from multiple angles. Lee Min-sun, Arirang News.
The protests in Hong Kong have been quieter the past couple of days, but now President Trump is weighing in. He's concerned about how China might respond, and he's due to talk soon with President Xi Jinping. Kim Da-mi has more.
In his strongest remarks on the subject yet, President Trump says he doesn't want to see the pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong met with violence by China. Speaking before boarding Air Force One for New Hampshire on Thursday, he instead suggested a sit-down between the Chinese president and Hong Kong protesters.
Well, I am concerned. I wouldn't want to see a violent crackdown. I really believe if he sat down, they have a certain little leadership pool. If he sat down with that leadership pool, I'll bet he'd work something out very quickly.
He also said a phone call is scheduled soon with his Chinese counterpart. On Wednesday, Trump proposed on Twitter that President Xi has a face-to-face meeting with the protesters to help resolve the crisis. China flatly rejected Trump's proposal, also slamming his remark that he hopes Beijing would humanely deal with the protesters in Hong Kong. China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hua Chunying said on Thursday that Hong Kong affairs are entirely China's internal affairs. Tensions, however, are only seeming to escalate as a mass demonstration will be held this Sunday with over 300,000 participants. While Chinese media claims Hong Kong's protests resemble terrorism, China's military was seen conducting exercises in Shenzhen, a city bordering Hong Kong. Dozens of armored vehicles were parked at a stadium, raising fears and concerns that the Chinese government may use the military to crack down on the protesters. 김다미, Arirang News.
South Korea's finance ministry released its monthly Green Book report on Friday, and for a fifth month in a row, it described the economy as stagnant. Growth in exports are weak, and the trade curbs by Japan haven't helped. Yoon Jung-min reports.
South Korea's industrial production has slowly increased, but exports and investments have remained sluggish for months. The finance ministry has described the economy as stagnant for the past 5 months in a row. That's mostly because of low growth in the global manufacturing sector, the sluggish semiconductor market, and growing concerns over the U.S.-China trade conflict. The ministry also said Japan's recent export curbs on South Korea have also increased economic uncertainties. Mining and manufacturing output grew 0.2% in June from the previous year, while facility investments were up 0.4%. Exports in July fell 11% on-year, affected by sluggish demand for chips and the escalating trade spat between Washington and Beijing. Outbound shipments have fallen for 8 straight months since last December. As for private consumption, sales of cars were down nearly 4% on-year, and sales at department stores and discount shops also declined. However, online sales and card spending increased nearly 2% and 4% each. Visitors from China jumped nearly 27% in July compared to the year before. Consumer prices edged up 0.6% from a year earlier, as prices of agricultural products and oil remained stable. The ministry said it will fully prepare against Japan's export restrictions and speed up the use of the supplementary budget, while doing what it can to boost the overall local economy. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
The ongoing Seoul-Tokyo trade dispute and resulting boycott has caused sales of Japanese cars in Korea to plummet last month. The trade ministry said Thursday that sales of Japanese cars plunged 32% in July on month to less than 2,700 units. The figure is also down more than 17% from the same month last year. Meanwhile, Korea's car production reached 360,000 units in July, an on-year increase of 17.4%. Korean auto exports were estimated at 216,000 last month, up 11.6%, the biggest increase so far this year. The rise is largely attributed to booming sales of eco-friendly vehicles and SUVs in North America and in the EU. The South Korean Foreign Ministry has been making diplomatic efforts to explain Japan's unjust export curbs to major European countries ahead of the G7 summit slated for later this month. The Foreign Ministry's Deputy Minister for Economic Affairs, Yoon Kang-hyun, went to the British Foreign Office on Thursday and met with the Director General of Global Issues, Menna Rawlings. Yoon conveyed Seoul's stance on the export curbs and asked the UK not to support Japan's claims at the G7. Yoon met the day before with French officials to discuss the matter and will also be sitting down with officials from Germany and other EU countries. Japanese beer has been among the products hardest hit by the ongoing boycott of Japanese goods in South Korea. Once extremely popular, they've seen sales plunge over the past several weeks as the boycott picked up steam. Choi Si-young reports.
Since 2009, Japanese beer has been the leading imported beer in South Korea. But new data from Korea Customs Service shows sales have significantly dropped since South Koreans began a mass boycott of Japanese goods amid the ongoing trade row between Seoul and Tokyo. According to Korea Customs Service, South Korea imported just $4.3 million worth of Japanese beer products in July, down a staggering 45% from the previous month's $7.9 million. Japanese beer now ranks a lowly third in South Korea's imported beer market after Belgium and the United States. In July, Belgian beer recorded over $4.5 million in sales, an increase of nearly 50% from the month before, while American beer products saw sales of over $4.4 million, almost doubling from the previous month. Once the most popular imported beer in the nation, Japanese beer products have already seen a sales decrease of 98.8% in the first 10 days of August compared to the previous year, with fewer Koreans seeking to quench their thirst with a can of Japanese beer amid the trade dispute between their two countries. 최시영, Arirang News.
It's time now for an in-depth look at the markets on this Friday, and for that, I'm joined here in the studio by Dr. Kim Se-wan, professor of economics at Ewha Women's University. Dr. Kim, thank you for coming in today.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, in his speech yesterday for National Liberation Day, President Moon did address the trade conflict with Japan, saying that Korea is going to move ahead steadily as a responsible economic power. What was in his message, and where do you see the competition with Japan or cooperation with Japan going forward?
I think President Moon's speech yesterday gave both of tough and moderate signals to Abe administration's economic retaliation. But President Moon's moderate gesture, which empathized more dialogue and more cooperation, has been ignored by Foreign Minister of Japan today. So as of now, the economic conflicts between the two countries is stagnated. But I think there is a high possibility that the mutual economic retaliation would be raised in the near future.
Yeah, things don't seem to be getting resolved very quickly at all. But
Right.
The Korean government, as you referenced, took Japan, or is taking Japan off of its own white list on
Right.
trade coming up in the weeks to come. But what products are targeted by this measure, and what effect do you see this measure having?
As of now, Korean government has just started a process of delisting Japan from the white list, or the most preferential trading partner list. But the fact is, Korean government did not clarify the list of export items to be exported to Japan. I think Korean government is doing this for leaving for rooms for more communication and more flexibility with Japanese government in the case of Japan relaxes its own restrictions on Korean export in the near future.
Yeah, we've heard people say that they're going to announce things very stringently and then implement very flexibly.
Right.
Right, yeah. And responding to the trade curbs, the Finance Ministry, Hong Nam-gi's, announced more than 2 trillion won worth of support for the parts, materials, and equipment industries. Is that going to be very effective? How effective do you think it'll be?
I think supporting materials and components industry by government money is a right way to getting out of Japan's economic sanction only in the long run. Because it takes a long time to develop and test the key materials and components to be used in the chip production and any other high-tech production, which used to be imported from Japan. So in the short run, I think we need to more focus on searching a substitute from other countries except Japan.
Right. Well, meanwhile, President Trump was going to put some new tariffs on China next month, and he's now delayed that to December. Can you talk about why he did that and the sort of scale of these tariffs and what products they affect?
I think there are three major reasons why Mr. Trump has delayed imposing tariffs on Chinese products. The first is declining stock market of the United States. Mr. Trump has been pretty proud of booming stock market in the past, but the U.S. stock market, for the case of the Dow Jones Industrial has been dropped by 7% between July and August. So he wants to revive U.S. stock market by delaying the tariffs on Chinese product. And the second is U.S. agricultural products export to China. Actually, China was supposed to import more agricultural products from U.S., but they decided not to do it anymore. So the agricultural industry and farmers are very strong supporters of Mr. Trump. So he wants to renegotiate to export more agricultural products to China by doing that. The third is Christmas shopping.
Right.
So Christmas shopping is a really big part of the U.S. total consumption. About the 20% of the U.S. Citizens' purchase of goods and services. So by imposing tariffs on Chinese products, there is a possibility that domestic consumption of the United States would be decreased. So by delaying the tariffs on Chinese products, he wants to promote domestic consumption. Because of this, most of the items that is free from tariffs from September is something related to Christmas and New Year's gifts, like computers, smartphones, and shoes.
Keep those prices down for
Right,
Christmas.
exactly.
Well, some are saying that this delay in the tariffs is a good thing in terms of signaling maybe a closing of the sort of conflict.
Right.
But others are saying that it really doesn't mean anything at all. What do you think?
I think delaying tariff is not a significant and structural changes of U.S.-China trade negotiations, but more fundamental changes is that in the shadow of coming election, Mr. Trump of the United States became more anxious about the having no result from the long-lasting negotiation with China. The second change would be China is about to take another position, long-term position in negotiating with United States. Like, rather than having unfavorable agreements with Mr. Trump's administration this time, it would be much better to have new negotiation with new president of the United States after 5 years, for example. So that would be more appropriate strategy for China's future.
Wow, very interesting. Well, Dr. Kim, that's where we're going to have to leave it today. Thank you for coming in. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you very much.
Now, Samsung Electronics is testing 5G in its chip-making factory in Austin, Texas, to see how it can improve chip production. According to the Wall Street Journal on Wednesday, the company's teamed up with AT&T, one of the biggest American telecom companies, to replace the factory's existing 4G technology with a customized 5G network, which will bring ultra-fast speeds to manufacturing. With 5G, peak download speeds are expected to be 100 times faster. The 5G network will also allow more sensors to be installed to improve safety, such as by streaming real-time data to monitor air quality and alert people if levels of toxic chemicals become unsafe. Japan overtook China as the largest non-U.S. holder of treasuries in June, recording its largest holdings since October 2016. According to data released Thursday by the U.S. Treasury Department, Japan's holdings rose to $1.122 trillion, $10 billion more than China's. This is not the first time Japan surpassed China as the largest non-U.S. treasury holder. It did so for around 5 months in early 2017. Analysts attribute Japan's increased holdings to the fact that treasuries are still more attractive than the debt markets of Europe or Japan. Other major foreign holders of U.S. treasuries also increased their holdings on month in June. In the past couple of decades, it's become far more common in Korea to own a pet. And owning a pet, of course, usually costs some money. In this report, our Hongyu looks at how much that might be and how the pet care market is changing.
More than 10 million people living in South Korea have a pet. That's one pet for every 4 households. According to a pet report by KB Financial Group, raising a dog costs an average of $85 a month, and raising a cat requires an average of $64 a month. Most of that money goes in food and treats. The rest of the money is used for medical care and grooming. But people are happy to treat their pets because these days, pet owners think of their pets as a member of their family. In Korea, these people are called pet fam. The pet food market alone has seen an average of 19% annual growth on the back of this trend. And because people think of their pets as part of their family, they want to take their pets along with them on trips. So tour companies have started creating pet tours.
Because there are people who want this kind of tour, we saw a potential of such product in the market, and so we came up with our Jeju Pet Tour. Pets can accompany their family all the time during the tour to Jeju Island, including at the restaurant, tour spots, and the hotel, because this tour is pet-centered.
There are even home spa products for pets such as skin moisturizers, scaling products, and grooming mist, labeled as premium products because they're organic, eco-friendly, and pet-friendly. They can cost up to $40.
Before, people used to think about pets as a living thing that you can buy just like a toy. But because people think of their pets as a part of the family, the pet market has become similar to the baby market. So now owners are turning to premium products for their pets.
And there are also luxury pet shops which sell premium products that can cost up to $1,000. That is the cost of a pet bed made out of oak in the style of the bed of King Louis XVI. And at these luxury department stores, the most popular dog food costs more than $50 for just 1.5 kilograms. These changing consumer trends in the pet market show how owners are willing to spend a lot on the best quality products for their pets now that their sin is part of the family. 홍유, Arirang News.
And that does it for this newscast. Thank you for watching.
Ago in 1999. Arirang TV aired overseas for the first time. Anywhere, at any time. Growing together. Hand in hand. With viewers around the globe. Arirang.